Welcome to the September meeting of Sunday Assembly Silicon Valley. My name is Bill Hathaway, and I will be your host today. My wife, Cleo, and I have been attending for about 5 years now, and this is the first time I'm trying out the hosting role, so I'd appreciate your patience if anything isn't super smooth today, although I have to admit having a teleprompter is kind of nice versus when we're at the lodge. So it is very nice to see a bunch of familiar faces and a few new ones as well. I am glad you're all here. For those of you that are new or have been away from Sunday Assembly a bit, the format of our program is to start with a song performed by our band, a reading, and a guest speaker. And then after that, we have a few more segments and songs. When the main program ends, we'll have some Zoom conversation tables if you'd like to stay and socialize. As we start, please be aware that this meeting is recorded, but it's from the speaker view. This means that your video won't be recorded, but you'll be able to rewatch this meeting on YouTube or Facebook, and you can share it with others who couldn't make it today. So as we get started, I have a question. Do folks remember September 2019? I know it might seem like quite a long time ago, but our music team combined a performance that they did last September with a new remote performance this year of the song September by Earth, Wind, and Fire. Be aware that everyone in the audience is muted, but please feel free to stand up if you would like and sing along. We love seeing the energy, even if we can't hear your voices. So here we go.
All right, I think a lot of you know this song, so I want to hear you. All right, let's go.
Thank you, band. That was awesome. We have more songs that are coming up soon, and thanks to all of you for singing from home. Just so you know, joining the band has never been easier now that they are collaborating remotely. So if you have a smartphone or some other recording device, a voice, and a desire to sing, please consider joining the band. We would love to have you. A little bit about the Sunday Assembly organization. Since its debut in London in 2013, there are now 48 chapters worldwide in 7 different countries. California is well represented with 4 other chapters besides the Silicon Valley chapter. Our purpose is to build a community of people that inspire one another to be their best selves, whatever that may mean to you. Our motto summarizes it best: live better, help often, and wonder more. Sunday Assembly is a secular community, so while we don't advocate for religious beliefs, we do encourage everyone to follow their own inner journey, and we ask of you to adopt the spirit of acceptance and respect. If you don't know me yet, I can't wait to say hi to you in the breakout rooms afterwards. If this is your first time to Sunday Assembly, congratulations. And please accept this virtual high five. And we owe you a real one once it's safe to resume in-person meetings. If this is your second time, huge congrats for coming back. You deserve 2 high fives. And you might start recognizing some of the names and faces of people that you've met previously in a breakout room from your last meeting. Okay, so a quick overview about your controls on Zoom. There is a chat function that is accessible via the speech bubble icon in the bottom of the window in the middle. We'll also be posting some links in there, and you can use it to send in any comments or questions. For example, if you'd like to give an update about what's happening with you, we would love to hear it. Drop us a few lines that will be read out later in a segment that we call Life Happens. If you'd like to people watch or focus on the speaker, you can switch between gallery view, which shows a whole bunch of people, or the speaker view if you look in the top right corner. You can also hide self view if you find that seeing your own face is distracting of your own quarantine haircut. But on the other hand, you'll have to look at my quarantine haircut, which I have to say is actually keeping pretty well. And also, lastly, remember, while you are muted, we are all about socializing. But during the program, you can cheer by using the sign language gesture of jazz hands. And there's also Zoom reactions that are available if you want to use that to applause. So there is an apocryphal saying that I've heard that's associated with fortune cookies that goes, "May you live in interesting times." And the last month has definitely been interesting, certainly not always in a good way. This past Wednesday, I looked out and I saw an orange tinged sky that appeared to belong on another planet. It seemed so unnatural to me. Every time I saw the odd colored light that was coming in through a window, my brain would get a bit confused, thinking it must be either like dawn or dusk, but it was in the middle of the afternoon. And certainly the wildfires have impacted a lot of people, whether from the large areas burned and many people displaced, or the really poor air quality that we've been experiencing throughout the region. And I know a lot of families have recently started to navigate a new school year that looks very different from anything they had imagined in years past. But it isn't all bad news. I've seen a lot of online communities springing up in the last few months that offer encouragement and support. Some people are also having an opportunity in these circumstances to try something new, whether it is creating art, gardening, figuring out how to do some long procrastinated home repairs, or learning a language. For myself, recently, I've discovered I enjoy baking. I've been watching shows on it and reading about it, and on Friday, I actually baked my first bread from scratch for the first time in my life. So I am glad to see a nice turnout today, and I hope people feel welcomed and supported by the Sunday Assembly community. I know I've enjoyed the opportunity to meet a lot of kind and interesting people by attending these meetings. Up next are Steve and Jean, who will be sharing 2 readings with us. Over to you, Steve.
I'm not only running all the controls here, but I'm doing a reading today. So welcome, everyone. And okay, where did this go? Here we go. Ken Nordine was a self-described jazz poet who produced several albums called word jazz. He was also a successful voice actor in commercials and cartoons. His word jazz pieces always featured instrumental accompaniment and sometimes sound effects. So please imagine, if you could, as I read his piece titled The Bullfighter, that I'm accompanied by flamenco guitar, perhaps with a bit of somber cello in a few spots. All my life, I have dreams of being the bullfighter. From earliest childhood, I dreamed of fighting the bull. I had much pride. I was young. Someday I would fight the bull. But as I grow older, I see the bull everywhere. There is too much bull. At night, my dreams are full of bull. What can I do? I must first fight the little bulls to keep in practice. After I have killed the little bulls, then my courage will grow, and I will be able to fight the bigger bulls until finally I will stand and face the biggest bull of all. And will I be afraid? Yes, I will be afraid. My moment of truth will have come. I do not look forward to fighting the biggest bull. So much nicer to fight the little bull. And who is he? He is inside me. So I will kill the bull that's inside me.
Hello, everybody. I'm reading The Crayon Box That Talked by children's book author and 11-time Emmy award-winning writer Shane DeRolf. Some of you might already be familiar with it. It's a children's poem that raises philosophical questions about difference, cooperation, and identity. And so it's not as simplistic as you might think. For example, how does intolerance transform into acceptance? How do you shift from conflict to cooperation? Can you start liking someone whose values are different from yours? And what if they help you or you discover likable things about them? So, The Crayon Box That Talked by Shane DeRolf. While walking in a toy store the day before today, I overheard a crayon box with many things to say. I don't like red, said yellow, and green said, nor do I. And no one here likes orange, but no one knows just why. We are a bunch of crayons that don't get along, said blue to all the others. Something here is wrong. Well, I bought that box of crayons and took it home with me and laid out all the colors so the crayons could all see. They watched me as I colored with red and blue and green and black and white and orange and every color in between. They watched as green became the grass and blue became the sky. The yellow sun was shining bright on white clouds drifting by. Colors were changing as they touched, becoming something new. They watched me as I colored. They watched till I was through. And when I finally finished, I began to walk away. And as I did, the crayon box had something more to say. I do like red, said yellow. And green said, so do I. And blue, you were terrific so high up in the sky. We are a box of crayons, each one of us unique. But when we get together, the picture is complete. And now back to you, Bill.
Thank you, Steve and Jean. Our guest speaker today is Randy Leos, who is a director of Braver Angels. Randy has made it his life's work to depolarize conversations we have surrounding politics. Too often we demonize and dehumanize those we don't agree with us about politics. But what happens if we emphasize curiosity and even building relationships? Can we actually be more effective advocates for our deeply held beliefs if we hold off on expressing them? So please, let's give a warm jazz hand welcome to Randy Leos.
Okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate the chance to talk to you all today. I think everyone on this call can feel the polarization we're experiencing these days. It seems like it's gotten so much more acute than we've ever seen. And looking at the violence that we're seeing in the streets, it feels like we're getting closer to an actual civil war. So, I would like to get a sense of how polarized we actually are. And to do that, I want to take a look at one of the more mundane aspects of that division. And one measure that I think is really telling is who we're willing to welcome into our family. So, for example, in 1960, 4% of Republicans and 4% of Democrats thought that they would be pretty unhappy if their child married a member of the other political party. And today, 35% of Republicans feel that way, and 45% of Democrats do. So we treat people who we disagree with as if they're worth less than us, and they certainly would not be worthy of joining our family. But do our divisions really have to be this divisive? In fact, I want to step back and ask a more fundamental question. Is polarization always a bad thing? Well, it's actually a really complex question. When my organization was founded, we were actually called Better Angels in reference to President Lincoln's appeal to the better angels of our nature in his first inaugural address. And that was given at another time of extreme division in our country on the eve of the actual Civil War. And Lincoln was trying to keep the Union together, but to have any chance of doing that, he knew that he'd have to balance and embrace diversity of thought. So he brought together a cabinet full of dissenting voices. Lincoln knew that pure policy polarization can actually give us distinct choices that allow us to have a meaningful debate over the best solutions to our problems. And the same is true today. A democracy works best when it's a marketplace of ideas, where the best ones win out. This allows us to test our ideas against those of others, making them stronger. It can be a sort of productive division. So my organization focuses on divisions of a different type called affective polarization. And make sure you don't call it effective polarization, because it's definitely not. It's about the emotion that accompanies the divide. It's the feelings of disgust and contempt that make you think that your fellow woman or man has less value than you, that they're not worth the time to get to know in any way. It's actually the start of a very dark road. The first stop is demonization. It's ascribing the worst possible motives to your political foes at the same moment that you're excusing your own bad behavior because you're doing it to save the country. And this is one of many cognitive distortions that we tend to fall back on as humans. Yeah, the human brain is a remarkable thing. It really evolved to do some weird stuff in defense of itself. Because the next stop that your brain makes is dehumanization. We start to think that maybe that person shares a little bit less of our DNA than others. We could never be like them. But maybe instead of 100% of our human DNA, they've got like 98.7%. Actually, does anybody know why 98.7% is a significant number when it comes to our DNA? Richard, I see that you have an answer for that. You can unmute yourself.
Didn't know I could unmute myself. That's what chimpanzees have, right?
Absolutely, yes. It is the precise percentage of our DNA that we share with chimpanzees. So when we think about that percentage, we start to realize what a big difference a subtle change can make. So did you know we actually have roughly the same number of hair follicles in our skin as chimps? It's really mostly the thickness that divides us in the hair department. And we've got all the same bones as them. They're just shaped a bit differently, right? And we've got the same basic structure to our brains, which means that not only are they the rare animal who laughs when they get tickled, they also think somewhat like we do. In fact, they're one of the few non-humans who can recognize themselves in a mirror. And the same holds when we get down to the very basics of our biology. Our cell structures are pretty much identical, but there are some tiny subtleties that can end up making a very big difference. One of those little evolutionary tweaks shows up in the development of our cerebral cortex. So that's the part of our brain that makes us behave in uniquely human ways. It's linked to things like attention and perception, memory, language, consciousness itself. So a 2016 study led by the Max Planck Institute in Germany showed that the amount of time the dividing cells that are forming the cortex spend in something called the metaphase is about 50% longer in humans than in chimps. All right, now I hope you'll indulge me in this little detour into cytobiology because I think it offers some instructive analogies. So metaphase is the part of the cell cycle where the chromosomes line up across the equator of the cell, and they make sure to split the pot equally between the two daughter cells that are about to be created. And this phase is only 4% of the cell cycle, but it makes a world of difference. So these stem cells that are forming the brain are called progenitors. And the longer they can keep up the accuracy of their genetic copies, the longer they can keep dividing, and the bigger our brains can get, the more little folds that we develop to jam in those little pieces of knowledge. And some scientists posit that this little tweak may be the key to our brains being 3 times larger than those of chimps, with twice as many cells in that cerebral cortex. All right, so thanks for sticking with me on that detour, because I think here's where we get the big payoff. What this literally means is that for these cells, they can achieve more productive division by lining themselves up together and taking a bit more time to focus on each other's similarities before going their separate ways. I totally agree with those German guys. We can definitely achieve more productive division when we spend a little more time focusing on what we share. So it means slowing down a bit, especially our reactions to others. right? Taking the time to question our own assumptions, especially about each other's motivations. You know, the key to our prolific neuron generation is our cells' willingness to double check that the information they're taking away is right. So when we teach people skills for bridging the divide, we emphasize that same principle. But when people do it, it's called active listening. So when you're talking to someone who you disagree with, take the time to repeat back to them what you heard them say. It'll make them feel heard, and it'll ensure that if you're drawing a faulty conclusion about what they're saying, well, maybe it's because of some assumption that you didn't realize you were making, or, you know, they'll have a chance to correct the record as well. And that way, even when you're focused on where you disagree, you can get to more accurate disagreement rather than taking aim at a caricature of your opponent that presents an easy target. Because we actually share so much of our political DNA, like many of our values and goals. You know, the big things. We all mostly want similar things from our government to keep us safe, to protect our liberty, to give us all a chance to succeed. And we believe in many of the same big ideas like fairness and protection from harm. But with subtle tweaks in the way that these ideas are expressed, it can have a huge impact on how we see ourselves. So a 2012 study tells us that we vastly overestimate the differences in our morality versus our political opposites. And dare I say this, in a pretty deep blue setting, it's liberals that actually make the biggest mistakes in this regard. So for example, they wildly underestimate the concern that conservatives have about preventing harm to others. It also includes mistakes about fellow liberals, as they often underestimate the conservative values that they hold, like respect for authority. And I'm happy to discuss specific examples of these in the breakout room later. You know, I hear it all the time at our events. People tell me they've learned that the two sides are much closer than they thought, and that there is more diversity on their own side than they realized. If we keep thinking of each other as different political animals in order to protect our self-image, well, where does it actually get us? Does it actually make us any better off? Well, not really. If we stop thinking that one another are really worth talking to, it probably doesn't help us much to understand the other side. It certainly doesn't help us to influence them anymore. I think for me, one of the best examples of this was during the 2016 election campaign, when we started to cut ties based on who people were planning on voting for. You know, based on the conversations that I've had with Reds, it truly feels like it was an act of self-sabotage that so many Blues declared that support for the Republican nominee was totally unacceptable and that they could not talk to those who did. This isn't to say that the same thing didn't happen in the other direction, but several Reds, whom I deeply respect, have told me how acutely of a threat they felt toward their friendships, towards their family relationships, towards their livelihoods. Now, I'm a progressive, and I recognize that many of the policies that we criticize, we do so out of concern for the people that we see these policies hurting. But that doesn't justify the demonization of one of the kindest people that I know for believing what she sincerely believes, especially when the result is that, like many Reds, she stopped talking to those around her about who she was going to vote for. And those Reds even stopped talking about it to pollsters. They just put their heads down and they voted. And then the Blues found themselves with a whole extra boatload of champagne on election night, and they wondered how they'd gotten so blindsided by the result. But even when we're on the winning side of an election, how does it play out? Do we really think that if we beat our foes in the next election cycle, that they'll be vanquished, never to challenge us again? Or will they return with a vengeance to undo all our hard-fought progress 4 years later? You know, the fact is, major social change doesn't come from just denigrating the other side to rally our base. To be effective advocates for the things that we care about, we've got to appeal to our common interests, to our shared values like freedom, equality, and security. This is an idea that I've gotten some pushback on. And even if it appeals to many people in theory, it's so much more difficult to put into practice. You know, some have said, you have to show the other side as the demons that they are, just like King and Lewis and the inspiring leaders of the early civil rights movement. But demonizing the other side is counterproductive. And that wasn't what those leaders did. They stood firm in the face of violence and made it very visible to the public. So society was able to look upon itself. Their words were important too, but those words did not tear others down. They called them up to join the beloved community, to invite even their oppressors to join in that community when it's realized. You know, the fact is, political depolarization is not about moderating our beliefs. I know my fellow depolarizers have deeply held beliefs about policies, but they recognize they can be more effective advocates for those beliefs if they put aside their contempt and truly listen to one another to find out what we can gain from building relationships. Let me ask, what do you folks think of when I say the word familiarity? Anybody have a thought about that? What saying comes to mind? I can't see everyone, so I don't know if there's a hand raised, but so I see Richard wants to contribute again. Go ahead.
This goes way back to my childhood. Familiarity, they said, breeds contempt.
Indeed. And, you know, Google suggests that we think about contempt, right? But what does familiarity actually do? In my experience, it fosters affection. And there have actually been tons of studies on what social psychologists call intergroup contact theory. And a meta-analysis of over 500 of those studies came up with a pretty conclusive result. That sort of contact definitely increases knowledge about one another, but the even stronger effects of this contact are less anxiety about the contact, increased empathy, and more of a shared perspective, which is why building relationships is a central focus of our organization. So we started with a few workshops in late 2016 and early 2017 in the wake of an election that revealed deep fractures in our national unity. And at one of these, Greg and Kuyar met. So Kuyar on the left is a Muslim immigrant from Iran, and Greg on the right is a conservative Christian who had harbored a deep sense of distrust of Muslims and immigrants. And they became friends and even ended up visiting one another's places of worship. But to get them to that table, we had to specify one very key rule about the event. No one was there with the goal of changing anyone else's mind about anything. It's not realistic, and it's actually counterproductive. Instead, we need to focus on building trust over time so that we can actually have a real exchange of ideas. Now, this may not seem like a groundbreaking insight, but it can be remarkable how far this principle can extend. How many people have, if I can get a show of hands, have heard of Daryl Davis? Okay, a few people. So he is a Black musician that found himself driven by the question, how can you hate me if you don't even know me? And it led him to befriend hundreds of members of the Klan over the course of decades, to the point where he's even driven friends to Klan meetings. And he's managed to build serious, respectful relationships with many of them, resulting in friends of his quitting the Klan. He now has a collection of Klan memorabilia from those friends that could fill a museum. If you're interested in this story, you can check it out in the documentary Accidental Courtesy. It's available on Amazon Prime. And I think that this illustrates how powerful this principle is. In fact, lots of really smart people have made it a focus of their work, and it's made them so much more effective. So author Glennon Doyle, who advocates for families in crisis, said, when you look closely at people, you end up loving them. Not anyone on this call knows who Brene Brown is, so I should probably mention that she's a researcher who talks about courage and vulnerability. And one of her most iconic observations is that people are hard to hate close up, so move in. One of the best places to start to move in closer is by examining our stereotypes, stories that we tell about one another. And it's actually where we start in our workshops because it helps us to see past the tired tropes to a much deeper picture. It also gives us an opportunity to be vulnerable, to look at ourselves and to ask if there may be some truth to the stereotypes that others hold about us. That honesty And vulnerability is the basis of such powerful relationships. And I'm grateful that I get to see those up close. So to close out, I'd like to circle back to President Lincoln, who, if you know anything about him from a biography or a movie, you know that he was a keen judge of character. And he once said, "I don't like that man. I must get to know him better." So I want to thank you all for inviting me here today. I am really grateful that this organization is interested in doing what you can to help address polarization. And many of us just want to get this election over with, right? But as we anticipate November 3rd, it's actually the day after that Braver Angels is really focused on. Because regardless of who wins, or when we even know the answer to that, the polarization and defensiveness or divisiveness will probably just get even darker. So we're, again, taking inspiration from Abraham Lincoln. And this time it's from his second inaugural address, when he proclaimed, "With malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right, as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds." And that's why we're partnering with community organizations around the country, like civic groups and congregations, along with educational institutions. And we want to help both sides manage their emotional reactions to the election results, or, as I'm sure we can imagine, the lack thereof. And regardless of what happens, we need so much to come together to address common challenges. These problems that we face are not going away after Election Day. So we need to recommit to the task of citizenship. And that task includes the courage and commitment to discourse before we forget completely how to relate to one another. And I definitely encourage you to go to our website to see this initiative. And because member support is so important to us, you'll also find a Support Us button in the top right corner. So thanks again, and I really look forward to talking with people at the speakers table in the breakout room.
Thank you, Randy. As a sign of our appreciation, Sunday Assembly will be donating $50 to Braver Angels in your name. As Randy mentioned, if folks would like to chat with him, he will be available afterwards at the speakers table once the main assembly program ends. And the Sunday Assembly will be organizing a With Malice Toward None event. We're still understanding what that involves, so we will provide details on that during the October Sunday Assembly. Now, Sunday Assembly is run by a dozen volunteers and is financially supported by the donations from all of you. You can also join our action team if you would like to help out with our music, our tech, content, or media. And the perks are that you get to contribute to our purpose and get to rub shoulders with the people on our amazing team of volunteers. So please reach out to either me or send us a message. And you can also support Sunday Assembly by donating using the link in the chat or on our website. Okay, it is now time for our next song. Our music videos over the past few months have been created by Krista. This month, other members of the music team have helped out. And the music video we have up next is by Aiko, and this is Wonderwall by Oasis. Here we go.
Today is gonna be the day that they're gonna throw it back to you. By now you should have somehow realized what you gotta do. I don't believe that anybody feels the way I do about you now. Backbeat, the word is on the street that the fire in your heart is out. I'm sure you've heard it all before, but you never really had a doubt. I don't believe that anybody feels the way I do about you now. lights that lead us there are blinding. There are many things that I would like to say to you, but I don't know how. Because maybe you're gonna be the one that saves me. And after all, you're my Wonderwall. Today was gonna be the day, but they'll never throw it back to you. By now you should have somehow realized what you're not to do. I don't believe that anybody feels the way I do about you now. And all the roads that lead you there are winding. And all the lights that light the way are blinding. There are many things that I would like to say to you, but I don't know how. I said maybe you're gonna be the one that saves me. And after all, you're my Wonderwall. I said maybe you're gonna be the one that saves me. And after all, you're my Wonderwall. Said maybe you're gonna be the one that saves me. You're gonna be the one that saves me. You're gonna be the one that saves me.
All right, thank you, band. And thank you for joining us from home. I love to see the energy being shared across the video stream. Next is our segment called Doing Your Best, where a community member shares a personal story on how they are doing their best. And today we have Aiko Yep. The floor is yours, Aiko.
Hi, everybody. In my day-to-day life, I work for a nonprofit called People Assisting the Homeless. And reflecting on how I've been doing my best within this theme of bridging differences, the often polarized conversations between people who do and don't support homeless services, people experiencing homelessness, and housing projects came to mind. Because our organization is mission-driven to end homelessness and serve individuals, families, and communities as a whole, I at times found myself at the center of these conversations between these polarized groups. Distrust and fear sometimes leads to neighborhood concerns about the people we serve. And on one such occasion, we responded to a neighborhood complaint about a tent that had been set up outside of an empty business. We approached to find a woman with tattoos up and down her arms and neck, seated on the edge of a sidewalk with her head down. She saw us outreach workers with a sigh of relief and explained that she just returned from the hospital. She shared that last night she had heard voices tagging the wall just outside of her tent. She poked her head out, begging the intruders to stop, fearing that she'd be asked to move if there was trouble in the neighborhood. They then beat her with a bicycle chain. And this woman, who others had perceived as a threat and a danger, recounted with shaking hands her brave efforts to protect her community. Time and time again, I heard from both sides, people who were struggling to find a place to lay their head at night, and those who felt discomforted by their presence. community members with seemingly conflicted interests, and it made me feel uncomfortably conflicted and pulled apart at times. But stepping back to observe and stepping in to listen, I came to realize that ultimately both sides wanted the same thing, which was to see people off the streets. PATH's permanent supportive housing developments and programs can only exist when communities come together, and this happened. Last year, PATH opened up a permanent supportive housing development in downtown San Jose. And over the course of 4 very busy months, we helped 83 households experiencing homelessness move into brand new studio apartments earlier this year. It's often still hard to hear both sides, but I hope to continue to do my best to bridge these differences, because these bridges could mean one day a home for the people we serve. Thank you for listening.
Aiko, thank you for sharing your story. If people would like to help us put on the show, you can take a segment such as the reading or doing your best. Just email us in the address in the chat and we'll find a place for you in the program that is right for you. We like to hear from all of you, especially about what inspires you to live better, help often, or wonder more. In the next part of our program, we will take a moment of reflection. It's sort of like a moment of silence, but in our case, we will actually have 2 minutes of nature sounds that Steve has recorded for us at the Henrico State Park last winter. This is an area that burned last month in the SCU complex fire. So let's just take a moment to meditate or just breathe. And we'll be back in 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for sharing that wonderful sound recording, Steve. It feels nice, even when it's hot or smoky out, to just being able to imagine myself in a pleasant natural environment. We're about to do the Life Happens segment, and this is where we share updates about life. Whatever you'd like to share, triumphs, difficulties, struggles, joys, whatever. If you haven't gotten a chance to share a life update, feel free to do it now. You can just put it in the chat box and we'll have it read out. And so sharing the Life Happens segment, here is Richard.
All right. First, Bill has already announced the major event in his life. I welcome him to the fraternity of amateur bread bakers. I hope he has as much fun with it as I've been having for the past 10 years. Let me briefly introduce you to a concept I'm going to borrow from our friends at Sunday Assembly Atlanta. When they made their Life Happens announcements, they had two forms of applause. When somebody has done something great, they clap hands. When somebody needs sympathy or support, they snap fingers to show that they care. Okay, moving along. Lindsay and Alex found a great daycare for Sylvia that is 100% outdoors. It's only in the mornings, but even that has been a godsend, and she loves it. Unfortunately, it's been closed a lot of the time due to poor air quality recently. Alex turned 38 on September 1st. To celebrate his birthday, he is playing 100 different fighting games and streaming them. Ask him for details. And one of Lindsay's grad students had to evacuate their home in Santa Cruz due to the fires. Everybody is safe, and thankfully they are back home now. John Feig built an outdoor pizza oven as tall as he is. Took almost 4 months of very hard work. He was able to test it a few times before wood burning had to stop. Lydia and Everett can now go to a safe outdoor preschool 2 days a week. Lydia started kindergarten a couple of weeks ago in the dining room. Every day it's a struggle to ask her to join another Google Meet and get her assignments done. The teachers are doing an incredible job. Fausto reports, the pandemic strangely accelerated my immigration process and I got my green card. Apparently, in-person interviews were skipped for trustworthy applicants. How little they know. Well, I trust Fausto, and now you know that you can trust him too. Raji, some of you know, has been working in this mystery startup for a good many months now. The startup now has a name, Ruby Elf. This was the name that Raji proposed herself. More than that, it has a working prototype, which she has shown us. And Steve Sargent, our valiant tech wrangler behind the scenes, he's the guy who unmuted me so I could make these announcements, has recently discovered that he had broken a bone in his foot and been walking on it for several weeks before it was diagnosed. Steve, you're a tough guy. I hope that heals up quickly. And just double checking my list. Yep.
Check the chat.
That's how life has been happening. Let's see. It's a girl. Wait a minute. Caden had a successful teeth cleaning at a pediatric dentist. Oh, now that's a major milestone, I know. And Sean, what am I missing here? Trying to keep track of this. Sunday Assembly East Bay is celebrating a new birth with congratulations to Deborah. It's a girl. So those came in at the last minute, and thanks for sending those in. My own update is that my son has started teaching in a middle school in South Dakota. He's doing virtual teaching. I know he'll do a fine job, but I don't know exactly how he'll do it. And I don't think he does either. Still waiting to hear. Okay, sorry for the false alarm, folks. I think that is the material for this month. Please let us know what's happening for next month.
Thank you, Richard. It's great to hear what's going on in people's lives. Next up, it is now time for announcements. Now, Sunday Assembly doesn't just happen once a month. Please feel free to join us for SMOOPs. SMOOP is a portmanteau from small and group. If you kind of smush them together, that is a SMOOP. And here is Jean to tell us what's happening.
So SASV's SMOOPs can focus on just about anything. So if you want a book club or a Zoom dance party, doesn't that sound like fun? Send us an email at hello@sundayassemblySiliconValley.org. We have Zoom Pro, so you don't even have to find the right coffee shop or rent a dance hall. And of course, all our events right now are online. So the first one here is online compassionate listening. That's tomorrow, 7 p.m. Contact Raji for details. Next slide. We have our online action team meeting on Sunday, September 20th at 11 a.m. Next slide. Happy hour. We have a happy hour this coming Friday, 5:30 p.m. Next, online philosophy, art and science of happiness. Richard runs that one. It's 11 a.m. on Sunday, September 27th. Next slide. Our brunch, virtual community building brunch. Join us. It's every first Sunday. And let's make music. Anyone interested in adding their voices to our virtual sing-along for the next assembly can contact Krista or send an email to that hello@sundayassemblySiliconValley.org address. She can send you the tracks for singing along, and you can send her an audio or video recording of you singing. And our next assembly will be on October 11th. October is traditionally our Remembrance Month, and this year we're sticking with the best traditions wherever we can. So that's the theme for next month. I'm sure, our guest speaker will be Bill Schroe of History San Jose, and I'm sure he'll tell us things about the Bay Area that some of us never knew before. So please join us. Back to you, Bill.
Thank you, Jean. So many people helped to make our meeting happen today. We have people who are presenters, folks who come to our organizer meetings. You might hear that referred to as our action team. We have tech people who run our online meetings, people who write and help for our newsletter and media, and those who contributed to Life Happens events. Our musicians and singers, and a warm welcome to Lauren Ilbaum, who just joined the band. So thank you so much. You are all the best. And then also you, our audience, you are the best. So we are getting near the end of the main program, and I just wanted to say a few words before our last song. As you've heard a couple times today, the Sunday Assembly motto is live better, help often, and wonder more. As someone who recently joined the Sunday Assembly Silicon Valley Board of Directors, one thing I would love to hear is if any members have suggestions that they would like to see that would help us in any of these three areas. This could be a speaker you think would be interesting, a modification in how we format our program or how we communicate, or perhaps a new small group activity or volunteer effort. If you have ever come away after an assembly thinking, hey, I enjoyed it, but I wish they did this one thing a bit different, please let us know. We welcome any feedback, whether it's something you really enjoyed or suggestions for a change. So, please feel free to chat with us in the break rooms, join our email discussion group, or as Jean mentioned, you can send us an email to hello@our Sunday Assembly address. And then We do have one more song for today, and this last one is Bridge Over Troubled Water by Simon and Garfunkel. This music video was created by Elizabeth and John.
When you're weary, feeling small, when tears are in your eyes, I'll dry them all. I'm on your side. Oh, when times get rough and friends just can't be found, like a bridge over troubled water, I will lay me down. Like a bridge over troubled water, I will lay me down. When you're down and out, when you're on the street, when evening falls so hard, I will comfort you. I'll take your part. Oh, when darkness comes and pain is all around, like a bridge over troubled water, I will lay me down. Like a bridge over troubled water, I will lay me down. Sail on, silver girl, sail on by. Your time has come to shine. All your dreams are on their way. See how they shine. Oh, if you need a friend, I'm sailing right behind. Like a bridge over troubled water, I will ease your mind. Like a bridge over troubled water, I
All right, one more thank you to the band and video editors. And that was the end of our main program. You are all welcome to stick around for conversation tables. We're tweaking how we do the discussions. You can come out of a room and be asked to put in a table with someone you want to visit with, and we hope you stick around. If you'd like to be placed at the speakers table to talk with Randy, just pop out of the break room and ask Steve. If you can ask by voice, that's a little easier for him. And if people are looking for an icebreaker, our suggestion is there anything you might change in how you relate to someone who is politically opposite of you? And as you go about the rest of the month of September, remember, live better, help often, and wonder more. Also, please stack your chairs.